in the grand scheme of things, it's about relations with Israel as well, and trying to quieten down that neighborhood in the Middle East.
Now, Syria's president has touched down in Washington, D.C. for an official visit with Donald Trump. The US president formally revoked the former Islamist militant's status as a specially designated global terrorist only 2 days before. The meeting takes place only 11 months after Ahmed al-Shara's rebel alliance ousted the Bashar al-Assad regime. President Trump was asked during a press conference on Thursday how he was feeling about the meeting.
Well, we're going to meet, and I think he's doing a very good job. It's a tough neighborhood, and he's a tough guy, but I got along with him very well, and a lot of progress has been made with Syria. That's a tough one, but a lot of progress has been made. You know, we took the sanctions off at the request of Turkey, at the request of actually Israel, at the request of a few different countries, and we took the sanctions off to give them a chance. And frankly, Iran has been asking if the sanctions could be lifted. Iran has got very heavy U.S. sanctions, and it makes it really hard for them to do what they'd like to be able to do. And I'm open to hearing that, and we'll see what happens, but I would be open to it. But we did take the sanctions off Syria in order to give them a fighting shot. And I think so far I think he's doing a very good job so far.
Well, I'm pleased to welcome Sarah Baxter, formerly of this parish and director of the Marie Colvin Centre for International Reporting. Sarah, good afternoon. Talk us through the agenda for the meeting between the two leaders.
Okay, so this, as you mentioned, is a huge turnaround for someone who was formerly designated a global terrorist and had a $10 million bounty on his head. President al-Shara has worked really hard with the US, particularly behind the scenes. And actually, it's this meeting with President Trump that's drawing attention to actually what has been going on, which is a lot of US and Syrian intelligence sharing to combat the rising threat again from ISIS. And some terrorist cells have been rounded up very recently. So it's really about intelligence sharing. It's about trying to get, on the Syrian side, it's about trying to get a Caesar Act in Congress, which prevents trade with Syria, lifted so that they can have a lot of investment in Syria, which is still, as President Trump said, a very tough neighborhood. But Syria it's taken back 1 million refugees. It's still got competing factions. It's got troubles with its minority groups, whether the Alawites or the Druze or the Kurds in the northeast. The Kurds, by the way, are US-backed, so it's about trying to integrate them into the new Syria. So there's so much on the agenda.
And Sarah, for you, what do you think is the key thing that the Trump administration wants to get out of this meeting?
Okay, so on the obvious front, it's the alliance against ISIS, and using a former jihadi to do it is good in the American view. But it's also, in the grand scheme of things, it's about relations with Israel as well, and trying to quieten down that neighborhood in the Middle East. Syria is not about to sign up to the Abraham Accords, or I don't think so, but it's about bringing in a lot of stability in that region. Syria neighbors Israel. It's got a huge amount of refugees in Jordan, in Lebanon, etc. And it is part of bringing pressure to bear on Iran. So that's why what Trump said about sanctions against Iran being possibly lifted at some point, if they play nice, no doubt, is also important. So there's a big geopolitical reshaping going on.
And how...
It's key.
Sorry, apologies for interrupting, Sarah. I'm just wondering how the fact that al-Shara, he was, as you point out, he was a terrorist. He used to, a long time ago, be linked to al-Qaeda. He's had a specially designated global terrorist status removed. Inside American politics, how's that gone down?
Well, there are some holdouts in Congress, which actually isn't even sitting at the moment, Harry, who feel that it's too soon to start trusting people like al-Shara. So But actually, I think there's quite a lot of goodwill because the Assad regime held sway, father and son, in Syria for 50 years and were very damaging actors in the Middle East. It was President Assad who was responsible for the killing of Marie Colvin. I lead her centre now in her memory. And while Syria remains unstable, very volatile, enormous challenges, and some very disturbing killings and massacres since Assad was ousted, al-Sharaa is being given a lot of chance to improve Syria. There's an enormous amount of goodwill towards him. And I think what Trump was getting at is that sometimes it does take someone who has that respect from coming in from the cold to try and unite the different factions. But it's a hell of a job he's got, and he remains viewed with some suspicion in a number of quarters.
But he has been on this kind of media blitz, sort of charming America on 60 Minutes, playing basketball with some American troops. He was on the Rest is Politics podcast. I'm just wondering how important it is that charm offensive with putting Syria back on the world stage as a nation that's treated no longer as a pariah state.
It's absolutely huge, the amount of goodwill that al-Sharaa has generated just from being open to interviews, putting himself out there, wearing a tie. Remember all that stuff about Zelensky, ridiculous. But actually, he has some of that factor that Zelensky has, which is very charming. He's using PR to press his case. I do think Syrians back home are more apprehensive, and some groups are quite disturbed by the amount of freedoms being restricted still, and the communal and political violence and threat of that within the country. So I don't want to paint too rosy a picture. It's been incredibly difficult. There was a lot of hope when Assad was ousted just under a year ago, and al-Sharaa has disappointed some, but he has also there is this feeling that he is trying to keep this very divided country together.
And Sarah, briefly, if it's possible, while we've got you, can you just give us an update on the government shutdown and the likelihood of it ending anytime soon?
Well, not too soon. There's a huge pressure point coming up. Flight chaos is really intensifying. And towards the end of November is Thanksgiving, the biggest travel day in America, bar none. And I think there's now becoming a race against the clock to settle this thing. Democrats think they've got the upper hand after doing well in elections. Trump thinks he can still hold out. My guess is somebody's going to fold fairly soon, and it might be the Republicans.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much indeed for your thoughts. That was Sarah Baxter, Director of the Marie Colvin Centre for International Reporting.